It is Earthsea month here on the Brown Booktuber channel, so today we're going to be talking about why you should read Earthsea. If you're like me a year ago, someone who has never experienced the true beauty, the power, the mystique of Earthsea, you should definitely take the plunge, take the leap, take the step, take the dragon to the realm of Earthsea. Truly, you will be blessed if you do so. This video I'm going to be talking about a couple of points as to why I think you should read Earthsea. I'm going to put them as chapters down below, so if you want to skip through different parts of the video, you can do that. Also, I'm going to put in the description some links to the Earthsea books for you to pick them up if you so please. But let's get right to the video. World building. The world building of Earthsea is truly spectacular. If you're like me, someone who once they get into something, they go off and they read and scour everything about that world, you're gonna love Earthsea. Because Ursula K. Guin introduces all the different parts of Earthsea so organically, and so they actually make sense in the narrative she is telling, but will also help flesh out the world. You learn about the wizards at a point in time because it is relevant to the story. You learn about the cards at some point in the first book, and that is meaningfully expanded in the second book. You learn about Roke, you learn about other parts of Earthsea and how people get around Earthsea, and how just the way the geography of Earthsea works influences different areas of the world significantly, and they make sense throughout. You know, that so many parts of Earthsea are so maritime focused, and so certain wizards are completely just people who work with the winds to help with the maritime. You've got parts of Earthsea which are just sea, so people are scared of it because the ocean is so expansive already. It's even more expansive here. Oh my days, it is awesome. And all of the examples I basically gave you came from just the first book. Can you imagine all the other stuff introduced? The second book, you learn why the cards are so anti-magic. You learn about the discrimination between the cards and the people of the islands in Earthsea. You know, you learn how certain parts of the world treat women, and you know how that has changed over time and the causes for that change. It's so well done. It is genuinely world building where you're not confused, where even though, like I said, I love world building where it motivates me to go off and read more, and I definitely did that with Earthsea, but I didn't need to do that because any questions I had about a certain group in Earthsea, a certain area of Earthsea, guess what? Le Guin addressed it in his subsequent book. Were certain characters mentioned in the first book? Guess what? By the last book, you've met that character, or that character, their families, you've met them. The characters introduced in the first book, wait a second, they get a payoff in the second book? A character who you thought was not all that important, by the third book you understand their role in the world. You know, a place that's mentioned in the first book, by the fifth book, we've been to that place, we've discovered that place. It is so organic, it is so natural. It is not like Le Guin has realized like 4 books later, oh, I mentioned this thing, let me pull it out of the hat. It feels like it makes sense. It feels like it was all part of the greater narrative, and Le Guin knew that was happening. There were other authors who wrote fantasy books who very clearly didn't plan out where their story was going. There were 7 books in that series. I'll let you guess who I'm talking about. Le Guin, on the other hand, very obvious they knew where they were going from the start. Spectacular world building. No, oh God, yeah, it's a part of the world building. No wonder all of like the fantasy authors nowadays basically try to replicate her magic system, because it makes so much sense. It is spectacular. The characters, so like I mentioned with the world building, all the characters feel like they have a purpose. All the characters feel like they make sense, even down to the most minor of characters. Even down to a little animal who you only have time with in the first half of the first book. Guess what? They are relevant in the last book. That one minor character has some sort of role to play in the final book of Earthsea. We have characters that are introduced in the first book who get so much development in later books. We have our main protagonist for the first 4 books who goes through an entire arc, and then you kind of see the consequences of that arc in the final book. How awesome is that? And all the progression all the characters makes sense. Them as people, the way they change, the way they act. Some other fantasy authors have characters who drastically change about 4 books into the book, and then it doesn't really make sense. But Le Guin, on the other hand, has her characters go through such organic change, and even characters who maybe are introduced later into the Earthsea Cycle, guess what? Their character development makes sense. You have a character who, and like when you're first introduced to them, or at least when you're first introduced to them, you think, oh, this is such a great character, but they're a bit of a blank slate. And then by the next book, you think, oh, they're perfect. And the following book, like, actually, no, we only think they're perfect because everyone else thinks they're perfect. But then Le Guin shows you they still have faults and how they can overcome those faults. Incredible. So good. You have characters who acknowledge their place in the world and try and combat things that would inflate that character's ego, that would make that character justifiably feel a certain way about themselves. But Le Guin has made them such a complex character that they can actually consider that and be like, actually, you know what? I'm not like that, and I actually shouldn't take certain things people say about me to heart because they don't actually know me. I know me. It's this whole thing where in reality we only truly know ourselves or maybe a few other people, and we can either take the things that people say about us to heart and make them actually change who we are as people, or we can actually consider what they're saying and be like, actually no, this is who I am, this is truly who I am. And it's all the characters are so introspective, especially the ones we spend time with, and the characters of all different ages feel realistic. You have characters that age significantly throughout the story of Earthsea, and you see their progression along the way. You see them going from naive, arrogant, self-centered to wise and tired, but also with that feeling of being self-centered, because you don't just lose those attributes you have as a youngster. You still have them when you're older, but you can actually think about them and you can be like, actually, you know what? I might be wrong in that, I might be leaning into my tendencies I had when I was younger, maybe I steam headfirst into things, and you'll do it, but then you'll realize it. And you have characters who do that. Characters who want to rush headfirst into something, and then they're like, oh wait, I've made a mistake. How awesome is that? You've got characters who feel like people. They don't feel like they are, this is protagonist of the plot, this is romantic interest of said protagonist, this is brand new up and coming protagonist, this is X archetype. The characters don't feel like archetypes because they feel real. They feel like people. Themes and messaging. The themes and messaging of Earthsea are so powerful and important. You have some fantasy authors who will actually try and address things like discrimination, whether it be racially motivated or misogyny, or it be, like religious conflicts. But they don't really hit the nail on the head. They'll introduce them, but they don't really try and teach a lesson through them. They're like, well, I need this character to be a bad guy, so I'm gonna make them a misogynist. I'm gonna make them racist. But Le Guin actually gives you a world reason as to why this is happening, why certain groups hold certain views about women in Earthsea, about, you know, how women are treated in Earthsea, and why women can't be wizards in Earthsea. It's explained in great detail in part of the 5th book. You know, Le Guin actually explains that. The 4th book is combating those ideas within the universe, but also those ideas very clearly are trying to combat the real world implications of the treatment of women. You know, women are treated in Earthsea as a reflection of how Le Guin saw women were being treated in our world, how, you know, people of certain races were treated in our world, and how Le Guin addresses that in Earthsea. And that's just one section. You know, it's not just about, you know, combating discrimination. That is one of the themes, one of the messages and ideas behind Earthsea. There is just greed is another great thing that Le Guin addresses and, you know, explains. You know, it's not very cut and dry of this creature, this character, there could be a creature to be honest, is greedy, so they're bad. Whereas Le Guin actually explains why they are greedy, what has caused this greed, and why and how it negatively impacts people. Not saying being greedy is bad and you should feel bad about it. It should be, greed is bad. This is why greed is bad. This is how we can address the greed and make it better in universe, but also in a way which actually feels like can be implemented in our real world. Topics like slavery are addressed in this book, and the slaves don't think, oh yay, I love being a slave, like certain fantasy writers make enslaved people come across as. No, Le Guin humanizes people who are enslaved. Le Guin explains and shows in great detail how enslaving people is bad, and how realistically people treated people who enslaved them, and doesn't actually try and make excuses for those who enslave others. Le Guin maybe runs into, you know, dubious, you know, it's dubious what happens to them.
Why don't we just kill these fucking people? Replied Percy.
But also it's heavily hinted at, you know, something happened to them. And it's not like the slaves were jumping for joy, being like, oh, we love being enslaved. You want to end slavery? That doesn't make any sense. You are so weird for wanting to end slavery. Le Guin doesn't do that, unlike some other fantasy authors do. It is very clear through Earthsea, Le Guin wanted to impart her wisdom onto us. And Earthsea truly is an example of it is that deep, bro. Because we have a growing society where people are like, the curtains were just blue, and Earthsea is like, the curtains aren't just blue, and I'm gonna spell it out for you if you really need me to. And it's not done in a bad way, because spelling things out can be done poorly, but the way Le Guin tells the stories, the way Le Guin very, like, precisely tells you, this is the message I am telling you through this book, works, because it doesn't leave certain things up to interpretations that can misinterpret Earthsea. You know, it very clearly shows you how discrimination is wrong, and how we can address that discrimination, and how even addressing that discrimination is not an easy process, and it's something that those of us who especially have a certain degree of privilege really need to be getting involved in doing, and really need to be taking a forefront step in ensuring those who are oppressed can repel their oppressors, can repel those who discriminate against them. Honestly, just addressing topics that either fantasy authors try to avoid entirely because it's a little bit messy for them to go into, or topics that other authors just very poorly try to address. And as someone who doesn't read a lot of the mass market literature, but I see people talking about it, it seems like that is a problem a lot of fantasy authors have nowadays. And finally, the plot. If you take everything else I said out, if you strip back all the other points I made about this book, and I just said read it for the plot, honestly, makes sense. Because you have the hero's journey told to completion, you know, but it is so much more than just the hero's journey, because it is a journey of so many characters. It is a journey of the entire world told in a way that makes sense. You have these characters who go through entire arcs that finish with like a bow on the end at the conclusion of their stories. And the world goes through transformation alongside these characters. And there's like a bow at the end with the plot. You know, at the beginning, you have characters that are wild, and the world is wild. And then you get those characters changing and becoming more fulfilled and more themselves until they reach the end where their story is over and you know it's over. And the world is being tamed and made to make more sense, and the story makes more sense, and at the end the story is told and there's a bow, and all the things that you saw at the beginning of the plot at the end are addressed. All the loose ends you see pop up throughout the book are nicely tied up towards the end. It's some people enjoy when things are left open to interpretation, but it is clear over the course of all of these books, Le Guin knew this is where this world is going, this is how we're going to address it, this is where the story is going, and this is how it's going to end. And yes, Le Guin had big, gaps between some of the books, but within those gaps, Le Guin was like, actually, you know what? It makes sense that I am addressing certain things I have brought up in previous books. Perhaps it is a benefit of the fact that Le Guin wrote the first 3 books in pretty quick succession, took a long gap for the 4th book, then took a long gap for the next 2 books, which came out in quick succession together as well. Maybe it is just a benefit of her having the hindsight to look back at her story. But actually, that's great. Why expect authors to rush through to tell a story and there to be so many plot points all over the place? I've not read Game of Thrones. I'm going to start it this year. I will do. But people who I've spoken to are like, this is maybe the issue that George R.R. Martin has, that he's basically got so many different threads to bring together and people want him to finish the books because they're scared he's going to die, which just kind of sucks, by the way. If you're more concerned about your book coming out that you want to read instead of the guy actually dying, that's kind of sucky of you. You should be better. But having the time to actually properly formulate where you want your story to go, where you want the plot to go, where you want your characters to go, where you want the world to go, something truly Le Guin did. And I'm glad she says in the notes of the 4th book, she was like, well, I'm very happy that I took that big break between 3 and 4 because I knew there was something I could do with 3, but 3 did end pretty well, but I knew I could do more with 4. And so she took the time until she found and crafted the right story and did 4. And it makes sense. Everything links. It continues from 3 into 4. And then even Le Guin's like, yeah, I regret calling 4 the final Earthsea book. So I was like, actually, 5 and 6, I can complete the story completely. I can put a bow on it. I can finish it. I can make the world make sense. And so she went back and did it, which is awesome. And I think more authors should do that. I think if you're going to tell a story and then you realize, oh, I've left loose ends, you can go back in the future and tie them up. And that's what Le Guin did. She went back. She was like, you know what? I can do more with these characters. I can actually make these characters' arcs complete. Complete. And she did that. And she made the plot all tied up. All the people who I had questions about in the 3rd book, guess what? They came up in the 4th. All the people I had questions about in the 4th book, guess what? Came up in 5 and 6. That character in number 1, hey, guess what? They were mentioned in 6, and I got closure for that character. The plot neatly tied up at the end, and it was just it was a journey. As a reader, it was a journey, and it felt like I grew with these characters and I grew with the plot, and by the end I was like, wow, truly, I don't need more. And I think there were other writings that came out, like other short stories and stuff, but truly, after the end of the Earthsea Cycle, I don't need more. I don't need to know anything else. I am happy with that ending. So that is why you should read Earthsea. Let me know in the comments down below if you have read Earthsea and if there's any more you can expand on what I've said about these books. I am so happy my viewers told me, dude, just start Earthsea. You've got the book, just read it. And I did. You guys gave me that kick in the pants, and now it's my entire, like, personality. So thank you for that. If you've gotten to this part of the video, thank you for getting here. I greatly appreciate it. I want to take a moment to say thank you to my members. Members get extra videos, they get bonus content. If you're interested, you can click down below to become a member, or you can go on my channel to join from £1 a month. But if not, thank you for reaching this part of the video. Like I said, I greatly appreciate it. There will be more videos about Earthsea coming out this month, but there will be non-Earthsea videos as well. So hit that like and subscribe button if you want more Earthsea or not Earthsea. It's gonna come up. And as you go, let me do some magic for you. That didn't work. That was meant to be way cooler. Thank you for watching.